Okay, so we're on Ayin Hamid Aleph, a few lines before the Mishnah, 75a4, the first column, second paragraph, where it says the Gemara cites a brayso which describes another defect. I think we did that first paragraph already there. Let's just read it again from the beginning of 75a4. Amar of Chisda, Hamilsa Migav Rabbi Shmuel. I heard the following thing from a great man, Umanu Reb Shela, who was a Reb Shela. Nishacha Kelef and Asimikomo Telekas. If she had been bitten by a dog and she had a scar, Arezamum. It's a defect that if he doesn't know about it beforehand and he finds out about it and sees it, it could be a cause for the marriage to be annulled and she wouldn't get a ksuva. Now, why does it say if a dog bit her and not some other thing? Because you can get a right. Rashi mentions that we have the word like a burn, that a burn caused, scarred up. So why is it specifically from a dog? I don't know. But this scar is also a mum, a blemish that can Amar Rav Chisda said also, Kol Ava Be'isha Rezamum, a deep voice with a woman is a blemish. Nemer Ki Kolecha Reven Marech Nava. Because in Shir Shirim, it's describing that she has a very pleasant voice and pleasant appearance. So if her voice is very deep and it doesn't sound like a woman's voice, it sounds like a man's voice, that is a mum. Now, how would he not know that it would be a mum in a culture where the chutz and the kala don't meet each other before the wedding? But this would be a much easier mum that everyone would find out about. It shouldn't be a surprise. Tani Rab Nasan Bira taught Bain Dade Isha Tafach, between the breasts of a woman, a tefach. Now, there's really Savar of Acha Berei Derava Kamei Derav Ashila Meimar. So that's what he said. He didn't. So Savar of Acha Berei Derava Kamei Derav Ashila Meimar. Rav Acha the son of Rava said in front of Rav Ashi to say Tefach Lo Aliyusa, that if there's a tefach between them, that's a very great situation. Amarle Rav Ashi said Gabi Mumentanya. No, when he taught that by listing blemishes. So if there'd be a tefach in between her breasts, that would be a mum. That's it's a significant enough thing that it could annul the marriage. The comma. So what would be a very good distance between them? Rabbi Shalosh spouse, 3 finger breadths. So 3 fingers is a little bit more than half a tefach. Sorry. Tanya, we learned in the right. Rabbi Nasan Amar, Kol Isha Shetadeh Gatzim Mishal Chavroseha Harezem Mum. Rabbi Nasan says if a woman whose breasts are much bigger than other women's, then Harezem Mum, that's blemish. The comma. So how big is bigger? Amra Miyasha Barbarei Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Mishmei Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi from Meshashia, the son of the son. So the grandson of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, send the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Tefach, 1 tefach larger. Umiyika ki agafna, is it possible to have such big breasts that a woman would have such bigger than someone else? The Amar Rabba Barbar the Gemara says yes. The Amar Rabba Barbar Chana Anira Ise Rabbi Achas. I once saw an Arab woman Shehif Shila Dadeha Lachara. She flung her breast behind her Veinikas Bana, and she nursed her kid. So it's big enough that it would go behind her. So this is kind of maybe appropriate for the 9 days now. For Titzion that you said, a man and a man who were born in it. And he will establish her on high. Amar Rav Mishashia Rav Shimon Levi So Rav Mishasha, the grandson of Rabbi Shimon Levi, gave a drasha on this pasuk. So because we had one statement from him, we're listing another statement from him. Echan hanolad ba. So someone who was born in Yerushalayim, the Echan hamitzapeler and one who is looking forward to seeing her. So that someone who yearns to see her is also going to have a reward that it's going to be considered as if he established it on high. So Rashi says that people who are born in it and people who look forward to seeing Yerushalayim, people will call them out and bring them to Tzion. Now, what's the chiddush of people if they were born there? If they were born there, obviously they why wouldn't they be there? So it would seem to me that this means someone who was born there and exiled from there. Because if you're born there and there, then what's the chiddush? Also, the thing is that if someone happened to be born there, what choice did they have in loving Yerushalayim? I mean, because you could say we know that from Avram Avinu, it's hard to leave your birthplace and your family. So if you're born to a place, you have a connection to it. So I would, so like I just said, I would think that the chap of this drasha is that it was someone who was born there and then was forced to leave. So the fact that they were from Yerushalayim, people say, "Oh, you're from Tzion. We're gonna, now Yerushalayim is being rebuilt. You're gonna go there." Even though that person didn't do that much, but someone who is mitzapeh, someone who is looking forward to the rebuilding of Yerushalayim, they did something. I mean, they had an attitude. They cultivated in themselves an attitude. I mean, it's possible they could have been brainwashed also, but they developed in themselves an attitude of yearning and desiring to see Yerushalayim rebuilt. So we understand why they have a reward that they are going to see Yerushalayim. There's a Gemara on Daf Lamed Aleph and Shabbos. Rava says in the time when a person is taken to his din. So that means when someone dies and they're having their din in Shemayim, they say Nasasim Nasata B'Emuna. Did you deal business with Emuna? Kavata Itim L'Torah. Did you set time for Torah? Now it happens to be that Norman Lamb, the former president of YU, he quoted, I think, the Shlah, either the Shlah or the Haflah, the author of the book Haflah, saying, because there's one pasuk in Nach where it says, Hayikba Adam Elokim, can a person steal or trick God? So there's a word either from the Shlah or that Kavata Itim L'Torah, did you steal time that instead of wasting the time, what? Yeah, you could bring her back. Yes, please. Morty, go with Chemda, please. Here. Yes, please give it to me and you're going. Yeah. Yeah, you need to. You need to, please. You need to help mommy feed the baby. So basically, did you steal time to learn Torah? But that's not the pshat. Kavati Yom Torah, did you set time for Torah? Sakta B'Piri of Verivia, were you busy with procreation? Tzipisa Yeshua, did you look forward to salvation? Papalta B'Chachma, did you deal with wisdom? Hevanta Davar Mitoch Davar, did you understand things from things? So this statement from Rabbi is actually explaining a different statement from Reish Lakish that there's a certain psak, and he darshans the psak that each of these different terms have to do with learning a different seder in Shas. And so asakta b'peri v'rivya, did you deal with did you deal with amuna that has to do with planting, with zra'im? Because in order to plow and believe that the stuff is going to sprout, then you're not going to lose all your money. It takes a certain amount of emunah. Moed, the second seder is about time. So kavati yitim Torah, did you set time for Torah? Chosen, so that's seder nashim. Did you deal with procreation? Period. Verivia. Yeshua is Nezikin, the seder about damages. So did you look forward to Yeshua? Wisdom is kachim and knowledge is seder taros. So you have to do. So Rashi there says tzipisul Yeshua. Did you look forward to salvation? He means to the words of the Nevi'im. So I guess the statement of Rabbi Akiva at the end of Moed, at the end of Makos, Mordechai, please give it to me, and you're gonna go. You need to. So Morty, please go with Chemda, okay? Mommy needs your help to feed the baby, okay? Morty, Mommy needs your help to feed the baby, okay? Go, come on. I mentioned it when he was here. Did he mention it 2 Sundays ago? But the story of Rabbi Akiva, the foxes, the Kodesh HaKodashim. Not that he didn't believe the prophecy, but so it's a pisa. Did you look forward to it? Okay. Abaye said, but one of them is better than 2 of us. So Abaye, who is from Bavel, saying one person from Eretz Yisrael is worth more than 2 of us from Bavel. Amar Rava. So even though Rav Mishashi, Rabbi Shimon Levi, darshan that even people who weren't born in Yerushalayim, if they were mitzapel Yeshua, will merit to see Yerushalayim. Oh yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, sir, because Rav Moshe was mentioned Rav Chaim Volozhiner about how come it's the Gemara in Moed Katan. I think it's in Moed Katan says Kol HaMisabel Yishlam, whoever mourns in Yishlam, Zocha V'roa, will merit and see in present form Bibinyana. Moshe spoke about it 2 Sundays ago. I think it was 2 Sundays ago. So Abaye is saying, so even though the pasuk with this drasha, even people who weren't born in Eretz Yisrael will see it. Abaye is saying, but it's better one person from Eretz Yisrael is better than 2 people from Bavel. Amar Rava said, "V'chad minan kisak lahasam," and one of us from Bavel go to Eretz Yisrael to learn. Adaf kitreminahu. He's better than 2 of them. The Rabbi Yirmiyah dechi havahacha, because when Rabbi Yirmiyah was here in Bavel, lahava yade mai rabbanan ka'amri. He didn't even know what the chachamim were saying. Kisak lahasam, but when he got there, Kari lan bavloi tipshai, he told us the foolish Babylonians. So one explanation of this Gemara is that they learned better in Eretz Yisrael. So one Amora from Eretz Yisrael is worth 2 Bavliim. But when someone from Bavel went up to Eretz Yisrael, he was able to take the tools from Bavel and excel and become much greater than a Bavli, and some say even greater than the regular Chachamim of Eretz Yisrael. So there's a Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Chav Daled that they use to discuss this. The Ritva in Yuma Dafna Zion quotes a Chuvas Rambam, who says that that wasn't always true. There were some times throughout history when the center of Torah was in Eretz Yisrael, and sometimes when the center of Torah was in Bavel. So this statement is that when the Bnei Eretz Yisrael were better than the Bavlim, was when Eretz Yisrael was the center of Torah. Now, obviously, they're Amoraim, so we know that a big shift happened when Hillel became the Nasi, because in Psachim, Bnei Beseira forgot the din of what happens when Erev Pesach is Shabbos. How do you bring the knife to shech the Korban Pesach on Shabbos? But Hillel, who had come up from Bavel, he knew the answer. And then Bnei Beseira, it seems they resigned because they didn't know that halacha, and then Hillel became the Nasi. So at that time, Bavel was a greater center of Eretz Yisrael. But then it shifted again after his time, and Eretz Yisrael was greater. And then Reb Zera fasted what, 40 fasts or 100 fasts to forget the Torah of Bavel, so he would be more successful when he went to Eretz Yisrael. So at that time, and here with Reb Yirmiyah, the center of Eretz Yisrael, the center of Torah, was in Bavel. So the Ritva in Yuma says, the Rambam says in the Tshuva, the Rabbi Yirmiyah follows his own opinion because it's Gemara in Sanhedrin, and we're going to read it in Eicha. Well, we should read. I mean, it's in Eicha, and hopefully we'll read Eicha and the Yantif of Tisha B'av next week. You had put me in the dark places, like I don't know, dead people of the world. The drush in the on Sanhedrin Daf Chav Daled is that this is the Gemara, the Talmud Bavli, and the reason is it wasn't so clear to the Bnei Bavel the reasons of the Mishnah the way it was clear to the Rabbanan Eretz Yisrael. And Reb Zera also, so Reb Yirmiyah had a negative opinion about Talmud Bavli. Reb Zera also, he wanted to forget the reasons of the Bavli because it wasn't so clear once he heard the reasons of the people of the west of Eretz Yisrael. And normally you remember better what you learned when you were younger. So he fasted that he should be able to forget that Torah that he learned when he was in Bavel. However, not in every generation was it so. In the name of Rava and Rav Yosef and Abaye and Rava, that there were decrees, as we learned in Bava Mitzia Hasochet Apalim. I think that was around the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And isn't now that generation was certainly, that was Tanaim though in Hasochet Apalim, unless there's another Shmad mentioned there in Hasochet Apalim that obviously was many generations before Abaye and Rava. And it also says in Elu Trefos, Rabbi and Rav Yosef and Rav Zera, they were running away because of these shmados, these pogroms and campaigns against Torah. And Rav Zera said to them, even with all this trouble, they're not going to forget the words of the Torah. But after the time of Rav Zera and Rabbi Yirmiyah, the Torah got stronger in Bavel, and certainly in the time of Rav Ashi, because the Gemara says from the days of Rabbi to Rav Ashi, we didn't see Torah and greatness in one place. So that's what the Rambam says. So according to the Rambam, well, certainly by the time of Rav Ashi, when the Gemara was sealed, the center of Torah was in Bavel, not in Eretz Yisrael. But from our Gemara here in Kesuvos, we have Abaye and Rava making statements. So is Abaye and Rava making the statements about their own time? If that's true, the Rambam is very schwer. So the Rambam would have to learn that they were talking about the Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi in the time of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's grandson, who made that drasha. It was like that. But in their own generation, it wasn't that bad. That's what you'd have to explain this more according to the Rambam. So I just want to talk about this for a few minutes. It's not related to Kesuvos, but the thing about the idea of why did Abaye say that one of them is worth two of us? So some say because of Eretz Yisrael Machkim, the air of Eretz Yisrael makes people smarter. The Shittim Gebetzes mentions that in the name of Rashi, and the Marshan Sanhedrin mentions that. Yeah, I saw that. I was looking that up. So why? So in the second paragraph of Makos, it talks about what happens if someone basically the main idea is that once the based and made up psak din, the psak din can't change. But if someone, let's say, had a capital case against him, and then somehow he escaped and he got to Eretz Yisrael, Beis Din would hear the case again. It's at the last mission of the first paragraph, Makos. Whoever's din was finalized, and he ran away. If they brought it back to the same Beis Din, they do not change the judgment. But wherever two witnesses would come and say, we testified about a certain person that he had a Gemar Din, based in Paskin in a certain place. And so and so and so and so were the witnesses. So then the Beis Din would kill him, even though they didn't hear any testimony, but they heard testimony that a certain Beis Din had paskined this person's chayv misa. So once this Beis Din hears that Beis Din paskin is chayv misa, is chayv misa. Now there was 50 years ago or so, there was the big fight in Eretz Yisrael, a little bit less than 50 years ago, I think, that there was a woman who was married in Poland before the war, and I guess after the war, maybe I'm mistaken in a couple of the details. And then after she went to Israel, and she thought her husband was dead, and she got remarried, and she had 2 kids. And then they found the first husband was alive and well, also in Israel. So that means that that the kids would be mamzerim. So it was a big problem. I think she asked him for a get, and he went to give her a get. And they looked at the records, and they saw that she was already married to someone else. So they said, "Okay, you can give her the get, but these 2 kids, meanwhile, are mamzerim." And then there was a big machlokas in Eretz Yisrael. People wanted to say that that how could a Beis Din be so mean, and and there was a Beis Din, I think Rav Ovadia Yosef and Rav Elyashiv and someone else, I don't remember a third, were on the Beis Din, and they said no, the Beis Din ruled properly. These kids are mamzerim. The father wasn't dead. The wife was still married to the first husband. And it was right after that, I think, that Rav Elyashiv left working in the as a dayan in Eretz Yisrael. I mean, he didn't leave Eretz Yisrael, but he was a dayan in the Israeli Beis Din system. And after the politics and stuff from this, and clearly he paskined correctly, but then he left. He left the whole system because of it. So Rav Goren made a psak, and he investigated it, and he said that the first husband was a ger, but he never really converted. He never was makabel Torah and mitzvos, and he was living like a goy. And the evidence so he published this whole pamphlet. I mean, it was like a book. It was soft, but it was bigger than a pamphlet. I have a copy of it, and I hate to say it, his reasoning was not compelling. And then I don't remember if it was Rav Uziel, someone else, a different. They wrote, besides for the fact that the psak was wrong from the side of psak, but there were certain procedural things that Rav Goren did wrong also, because one Beis Din can't rehear a different Beis Din's case, and in this case, the Beis Din that heard it gave the psak, and then there was the highest Beis Din also looked into it because it was such a serious thing, and they agreed with the original Beis Din's psak. And he said Rav Goren wrote something like he has like 9 or 10 other Rabbanim who were on this basin and agree with this psak, but none of them wanted to mention their names. So from this Mishnah, so he says you can't just say I had a basin. You have to know who the basin is. And there is a little bit of a diuk from this Mishnah on Makos Dav Zayin about that, because two people will come and say we're testifying about Shmerel here that he had a Gemar din in Basin Shalploni. Whether you say he was the Basin in Tiberia or the Basin in whatever, but we know the place, so we know who the Dayanim are. He made up. I mean, and we don't have it's true that the Basin system that's now in Eretz Yisrael isn't the way that this Mishnah here actually talks about it, or the Mishnah about, it's the Gemara on this Mishnah about every city, according to the Ramban, in every district, and according to the Ramban, I think, every Shevet had a supreme Basin for their Shevet, and then obviously there was the Sanhedrins on Harabayas with the Sanhedrin Agadol. There also, and obviously we don't have that, but you have to know who the Basin is. And if he says, I had this Basin and I'm not telling you who else is on the Basin, it's not a Basin. We don't have to listen to them, even if we knew who it was. But one Basin can't take jurisdiction away from a different Basin. So this Mishnah kind of says, because they told us which Basin it happened in and who the witnesses were. One of the proofs that he brought that this guy was an invalid conversion is because basically what we would call now a social worker. Someone went from the kids from the school, because this guy, I guess, also had a family. I don't remember all the details now. And they said that this guy, the teacher or the social worker who visited the house, said the father is a goy. So from the fact that a female teacher is not even an aide, she can't be a witness, and she wrote it in a report. She wasn't even, I don't know if the Basin ever even found, Rav Goren's Basin never found her. They found this report that they wrote the father is a goy. So based on that, the father is a goy. They had the gabbai from the shul that the guy went to, and the guy said, hey, I give him an aliyah because he comes to shul. That guy, Rav Goren, says he's not trustworthy. But this report that a teacher, a social worker, whatever, it was a big thing, and so it was a big situation, and it was not a Kiddush Hashem, but people in Israel think, there's always a rabbi who could figure out a reason for it. And not every case, has a heter. Not every case has a heter, and it's unfortunate. But part of the mamzeres, we know the Rambam says in Maravuchim, and the mamzeres, the mamzer didn't do anything wrong, but it's to try to make, and this was a case with the Holocaust happening and this and that. You can understand they thought someone was dead and this and that. Why they didn't go to try to, they set up, but they didn't, and stuff. Even in the DP camps already, they were saying we're trying to investigate who's alive and who's not, to allow women whose husbands were, if they would saw people, we saw the husbands go to the left, whatever, at the selection, then they would say, then the husband was killed, and then the wife could be remarried. They had to deal with these shilas, and they did. They dealt with many of them, unfortunately. Whatever reason that was, but the Rambam says it's just that normally it's not an accident like this case was, but it's to show the avera you're going to do is so strict. Any descendant you get from this avera is going to be a mamzer. I mean, bakal. It's trying to show how strict. So it's true the boy and the girl didn't do anything wrong, but that's the halacha. And brilliant dayanim tried to find a heter and couldn't. Rav Ovadia has a son, I think, in Tzfat, whose English is actually pretty good. He gave a speech for a program, a Jewish thing and law at Harvard, and it was great. It was very interesting. I didn't expect him to be speaking English. I saw it on Zoom. It was a couple years ago. He didn't go to Harvard for the speech, but he was talking about how his father, Rav Ovadia Yosef, spent so much time to basically from all the soldiers who were killed in the Yom Kippur War, he tried to find enough evidence to give a heter that any of them who were missing, that their wives could get remarried, that the wives weren't a gun anymore. And I just saw actually on the internet yesterday or 2 days ago that there was a case, the last missing person from October 7th, an elderly woman. They just met with him and said their reasons for why they think that they could declare her dead, and he said that they could declare her dead from October 7th. But he was talking about the effort that his father spent in 1973 after the Yom Kippur War, that that there shouldn't be any more agunos.
They had several cases on September 11th.
Yeah, so September 11th, there were definitely a lot of cases because we knew people were in the building. We have a book about it here on the shelf from the RCA. And Rabbi Reese spoke about it last September 11th, not for a special anniversary, just stam. But yeah, there were cases too. So, but there were cases that, for example, the kids sat Shiva and the wife wasn't allowed to sit Shiva yet. So for the kids, they could assume he's dead, but because of the wife, they needed to pass him to Ugona. So they ended up investigating. Part of what they did for some of the cases was cell phone things, and if they could, the cell phone towers were pinging the phones as being there, they were saying that was enough evidence that they were at the tower. And then also using DNA, because they were combing through the debris at the end to find DNA of everyone. My uncle from here knew someone whose sister worked in the restaurant on the top of the World Trade Center, and they found her DNA about a month after September 11th, because she was all the way at the top on the top floor, so she was near the top. So they found DNA and told them a month later, which was pretty, for other people it took much longer because of all the other debris that was collapsed on top. She wasn't Jewish, that wasn't a child, but yeah, there were people, and they called home because, see, the thing is, and this is the end of Yevamos. We're not the last two prakim in Yevamos are all about this. If the guy was drifting out at sea and this and that, how do you know that he's really lost? Every few years, you see a case in the newspaper, nowadays on the internet, that someone somehow disappeared and made a new life for 25 years, was living somewhere else, and no one knew what happened to him, and really just somehow assumed someone else's identity and took a different name and had a different life. And some of these people, the courts declared them dead because the wife or the kid, whatever, say, we don't know where he is, and after a certain amount of time, the court declares them dead, and this and that, and really they weren't. So we see in our time still some people, they disappear. So when an event like that happens, whether a battle suddenly came into a town or something like September 11th, someone who wasn't there could have used it as a subterfuge to just disappear. And we have to make sure that doesn't happen. That's one of the reasons why the Aguna Shilas are hard, because even though it's very, very rare that someone would use an event like that to pretend that they were killed in it, and to start, and really they disappeared and went quietly somewhere else and started a new life. It happens, and that's why we have to so back to the so that was a big digression there, but from this Mishnah, it says, so the Gemara there says in Makos, in front of that based in, they don't review the case. They just, if he ran away, but they recaptured him, they don't run away. But it sounds like if he went to a different based in, they would review the case. But the second case says, wherever two people said and say, we're testifying that Shmerel was found guilty in such and such based in, and Shmerel and Beryl were the Adim, the based in kills him, and they don't review the case either. So that sounds like you never review the case. So Rabbi lo kasha, kan ber tishra, kan b'chutz la'aretz. in Eretz Yisrael, you would review the case. In Chutz Eretz, you wouldn't review the case because Rabbi Yehuda and Dostoi said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Shatach, if someone ran from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, you don't cancel the din. If they left from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, they would reinvestigate the case because of the zuchos of Eretz Yisrael. So what's the zuchos of Eretz Yisrael? So from the perspective of our Gemara, it could be that the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael were of a higher caliber than Bavel. So the zuchos of that the Dayanim could maybe find a heter that in Bavel they couldn't think of a heter. But you could also say that the zuchos of Eretz Yisrael, that the person is now in Eretz Yisrael, the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is great, that because he is now in Eretz Yisrael, they might be able to find a zuchos on his behalf. But from our Gemara, so then it would also depend on historically, like the Rambam's tshuva that we said from the Ritva. But from the perspective of what our Gemara seems to be saying in the Rambam, the zchus of Eretz Yisrael is that the Chachamim were of a higher caliber in Eretz Yisrael, so they should review the case because maybe they'll find a heter. But if someone was in Eretz Yisrael and went to Bavel, if the Talmidei Chachamim, if the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael couldn't find a heter, a zchus for him in Bavel, they're not going to find a zchus for him. Okay, Mishnah. So if she had a mum, a blemish, and then the husband is saying, she has a blemish. I'm not marrying her. I'm not going to take her to the chuppah. I'm not marrying her with these blemishes. So the father has to bring a proof that she already had these mumim from the time that the erison happened, and it's like the husband's field got flooded. So it was his bad luck that he didn't notice it. Because sometimes you buy a field or you buy a stock, and a week later it tanks. Sometimes you have bad luck and you lose your shirt from it. So in this case, the husband should have known about the mum because the mum was already there. But we say no. We say the father has to show that she already had the mum, and the husband should have noticed it. Once they did chuppah, and then the Baal is claiming, oh no, she has this mum. Then it's the husband's responsibility to bring proof that she had these, that even before the erison happened, she had these mummin, and it's a mekach taos. It was a false sale. He was sold defective merchandise. So we see in both cases, so the Gemara is going to say, but we see that up until a certain before the chuppah, the husband is believed to say, oh, she has this mum, and the husband is believed, and then the father has to prove that no, the mum was already there. But once the chuppah already happened, now it's the husband's responsibility to show that the mumim were there before, and he was misled about them. Diva Rabbi Meir, this opinion Rabbi Meir. Chachamim say, when is this true? These are mumim in covered parts of the body that you couldn't see. We turn to Ayin Hamid base. But if they're visible, they're in the parts of the body that you could see, he's not able to make the claim. He should have seen it. Or he did, or we assume that he did see it and he was okay, and he married her and did chuppah with her, knowing about them. But if there's a public bathhouse in that city, he's not able to complain at all about a mum, even a mum in a part of the body that's exposed, because he would have asked his relatives in the bathhouse, does she have a peg leg? It's a little bit of an extreme case, but maybe she has a good prosthetic, and he never noticed that she had a prosthetic. But if she went to the bathhouse, his relatives, he say, did you notice anything about her there? Oh yeah, she has a prosthetic leg. That would be a mum shebegaloi. A mum Sheba Seser, but even other things, they say she has a big birthmark on her upper arm, let's say. So he wouldn't see it because she wears sleeves because Benos Yisrael wears sleeves. So that would have been considered a mum Sheba Seser. But if there's a public bathhouse in the city, he should have checked up with his relatives. Gemara, Taima Demaisi Avraya, Hello Maisi Avraya Abal Mehemet. So in the first case of the Mishnah, where he's claiming that she has a mum, and the father has to bring the proof that the mum was already there from the time of the Nesua of the Arison. So the implication is if the father can't bring witnesses to prove that the mum was already there at the time of the Arison, the husband would be believed. Money, whose opinion is this? Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua that we saw in Daf Yud Beis Domelomi Piano Chayim. We don't live from her mouth. So that if you remember that case, it's a while ago. But that case is they say a woman comes and she's pregnant. They say, well, who are you pregnant from? You know you're not married, or you're not wearing a ring. She says, oh, it's from Chaim Pipik, and he's a Yisrael, or he's a Levi. So she's saying that the kid is that it's not from a goy and it's not from a mamzer and this and that. Rabbi Yeshua says we don't live by her mouth. She has to bring proof who the father of the baby is, and Rabbi Gamliel says that we do believe her. So in this case, so even though this isn't the exact same case, but Rabbi Yeshua says we need to have real proof. So in this case, if the father can't bring proof that the mum was already existed at the time of the Arison, we can't believe the father. Aim a seifa, but in the second case of the Mishnah Nichnas if the Nisuin already happened, the chuppah already happened, then the husband has to bring the proof that the mum was already there at the time of the Arison and he didn't know about it. Time of Demaisi Abal Raya, Hala Maisi Abal Raya of Mehemen. In that case, the reason is because the husband didn't bring it was bringing proof, but if the husband doesn't bring proof, then he's not believed, and the marriage takes place, and she doesn't lose her ksuva for having this move. So how come in that case we trust the father? In that case, Asan, the Rabbi Gamliel, Damar Namenes. That ends up being according to Rabbi Gamliel in the Mishnah on Daf Yud Beis, who says we do believe her when she tells us that the father of her baby is Chaim Pipik, who's a Levi, and he's not a goy, not a mamzer. So we had a few Mishnayos in a row, machlokes between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yeshua. Here we have the same Mishnah. The first case is like Rabbi Yeshua. The second case is Rabbi Gamliel. So what's going on? Rabbi Lazar Tavra. Rabbi Lazar says that it's a broken Mishnah. I think the word Tavra is from the word, because tough and shin switch, it's the word shever, it's broken. I don't understand what the Arch Girl says here. The Arch Girl says, Tavra, there's a contradiction. He says this follows Rashi. According to Rabbeinu Hananel, the word Tavra connotes an oath. See Tosfos.
The father is not goy, he is not mother. I think in this situation, goy is better than
Yes. Goy is better than mamzer. But either way, is the kid a kosher kid or is he not a kosher kid? So Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yoshua says we don't believe her. She has to bring witnesses and say they saw her go into the hotel room with this guy. And Rabbi Gamliel says no. If that's what she says, we believe her. So in this case, in our Mishnah, in both cases, the husband's making a claim. She had a mum. It was withheld from me. I didn't know about it. Had I known, I would not have married her. And we're saying in the first case, we believe the husband and not the father. But in the second case, we don't believe. We believe the husband and not the father. So Rashi does say Tavra. Rashi says Kashya Reisha L'Seifa. The first case is a contradiction or a very big difficulty to the Sefer. But if you read it together, I think there's an easier psak. Tavra, break it up. Mi shanazu lo shanazu. The author of the first clause is not the same author as the second clause. Well, maybe in the grammar, what I'm saying doesn't make sense. but maybe it does. It's saying Tavra, break up the Mishnah. The Mishnah, you have to, in order to understand, you have to explain it. The Tana of the first case is not the Tana of the second case. Because in the first case, we are believing the husband's claim. And even though the father's denying it, we say, the father, you have to bring proof. Like Rabbi Yoshua and Daf Yud Beis. And in the second case, once he already did chuppah, we say that he has to bring the proof that and the father is denying that there was a mum. Then the husband has to bring the proof, witnesses to show that she had the mum beforehand. So in this case, when the father says she didn't have a mum, we're like Rabbi Gamliel, we're believing the father. So why is it? Because the author of our Mishnah, the author of the first clause, is not the same as the author of the second clause. Amar Rabba, lo tim Rabbi Shula Azo Bezer Chazaka to Gufa Kla. Rabba says, don't say that Rabbi Yeshua never follows a chazaka of the body. So meaning a chazaka is, if something is a certain way now, we assume it's been like that for a while. Or the biggest case, when you find, let's say, one of the biggest relevant, the two big relevances to our lives today. One is if a shochet is shechting, and then he checks the knife, and the knife has a problem, has a nick in it. So do we assume the nick just happened? The nick just happened, but in the chicken or the steer that he shechted a couple minutes ago, it was still okay, or do we hold it's only okay from the previous time that he checked it and he found it without a nick, but the nick could have happened a second after that. So when we visited once a shecht house with Rav Moshe, with a very veteran mumcha expert shochet, actually Rabbi Cohn's brother-in-law, the whole time, every minute or every couple times a minute, and he was shechting sheep, so not cows, but we kept the whole time he's going like this, like the same way you would just like feel your thumb with your finger. He's just checking the knife like this the whole every couple times a minute. It was very interesting to see because he's always checking it, so there's no shilas. So that's one case where the chazaka comes up. So do we say that we only know the knife is good as of the last time we checked it was good, but now that we find it's bad, we consider it went bad a second after you checked it last and knew it's good? So that's one case of chazaka. Or the second, it's a similar case. If a woman, and this is more relevant, it's not so relevant nowadays, only to a certain extent. It was much more important in the days where they had to have truma and had bitahor for that. If a woman sees now that she sees blood, so she's tmeya, she can't touch the truma, or she'll. So do we assume that she just became tmeya now, or do we say she's only tahora as of the last time she checked herself and didn't find any blood, but we assume that the blood came a second after she checked herself last? It's the same type of machlokas. So now that she has a chazaka de gufa would be that. So from Rashi, part of the shaila is that here there's two halachic issues going on. One is that does she have a blemish, does she not have a blemish? And so that's of whether she has a blemish or not. But the second issue is does she get her ksuva or not? Right now, the money is in the hands of the husband.
Where she belongs.
And if it ends up so if she really doesn't have a blemish and he wants to divorce her anyway, he's going to have to pay her the ksuva. And if it ends up that she had the blemish, she doesn't get her ksuba. But meanwhile, where's the money right now? The money is in the husband's hand. He didn't pay it off. And there's a saying, possession is 9/10 of the law. At the beginning of Bav Mitzia, it's similar to that, not exact same thing. But we have a chazak of the money. Right now, the money's in the husband's hand. So how can whose chazak is stronger to make the money leave that we force the husband to pay? So it's not that Rabbi Yeshua rejects the case of following the chazaka of her body. So Rashi says, even in a place where there is no chazaka of money, contradicting the chazak of the body. So he's saying Rabbi Yeshua does believe. Do you have a minion there yet?
Are you going to start these days?
Yeah, I'll stop right now, or if I'll finish to.
Yeah.
Do you have a minion? Okay.
No. Oh, yeah, what's his name? We have 9.
Okay, so I'm a Rabbi Lotem Rabbi Yeshua.
What's his name?
Ela kilo azal Rabbi Yeshua basar chazaka de gufa hecha ika chazaka de mamona. Rabbi Yeshua isn't following the chazaka of the body when it contradicts the chazaka of the mammon. Who is in possession of the money? So the chazaka of her body isn't enough to make the money change hands. But when there is no chazak of the money can go wherever it needs to go. If it could, Azar Rabbi Yeshua Besar Chazaka de Gufa. He will follow a chazaka of a body. The Tanya, because we learned in the Braisa, Im Baheres Kodem L'Seir Lavan Tame, Im Seir Lavan Kodem Baheres Tahar, Safek Tame. So there's halacha in tsaras. If you have a spot of tsaras and you have a white hair inside the tsaras, it's a sign that it's a tame tsaras. But that's true if first you had the tsaras, then you had the white hair. But if you already had a white hair on your skin and then tsaras came around it, it's not necessarily tamei tsaras yet. If it's a safek, so if the white hair came first and then this spot came, you're tahor. If it's a safek, tamei. Rabbi Yeshua Omer keha. Rabbi Yeshua says weak. So my keha, what does he mean that it says weak? Amar Rabba keha tahor. Rabbi says it's weak, meaning that he's tahor. So what it means here is that in the case of tsaras, Rabbi Yeshua does believe the chazaka of the body, and so if we see that he has other white hairs, so it's possible that the white hair, it's probable that the white hair came first and then the spot, so the spot is not a spot of tsaras. Okay, I apologize.